This episode of Accelerate is brought to you by Tech Coast Angels. TCA is a catalyst in helping to build the startup economy. With headquarters based in Southern California and with more than 425 members and 3 angel funds, TCA has the financial ability to fund and help startups at the seed. Investing in most industries, TCA looks for companies with an innovative solution to a problem and with a clear and sustainable advantage. TCA is actively seeking great startups and entrepreneurs in the US and Canada regions with a particular emphasis to fund entrepreneurs located right here in California. Providing more than just money, TCA brings connections, knowledge, mentoring, and operational assistance to bold early-stage entrepreneurs with game-changing ideas. Visit techcoastangels.com for more information.
Are you ready for the Hollywood Chambers Accelerate?
Coaching sessions that help accelerate your business growth.
We break down complex issues in a short format.
From the principles of finance to marketing strategies that will propel your organization.
Learn from industry experts, tastemakers, and business leaders.
Gain knowledge and resources that foster growth and innovation.
The Hollywood Chambers Accelerate.
Available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all other streaming platforms.
What I'd like to do is talk about perfect pitching. We'll break it into segments, but I would like the dialogue. Ask any question. As you can tell by my accent, and you'll also see by my attitude, I am a New Yorker, so I am a transplant. And it's I tell it like it is, it's fairly unfiltered, but hopefully that unfiltering will be that direct so you can really see the points that I'm coming out with. And if you ask me a question, I can guarantee you that I will give you a direct answer. It won't be it won't be political, it won't be circumspect, it won't be oblique, it'll be direct, and hopefully you gain something out of it. Everything is fair game. Okay? So I want to ask you a question as we go to the first slide. What is the purpose of a pitch? You can't cheat. I mean, Jack can't cheat. You can't look at that. What's the purpose of a pitch? Why does an entrepreneur want to pitch to an angel group or anyone else? Or why do you, as a business person, want to pitch to the bank for money? What's the essence of that pitch? What's it supposed to do? Other than obviously getting money, but what is it really supposed to do? Yeah, you want to, pretty close. What you want to do in a pitch is get the interest level, because you're going to go through several stages. I don't know if the bank gives money, but when I wind up, would you give me money if I wound up on the first, on your doorstep and said, hey, I just need $1 million to do something? Now, if I were Elon Musk, you might do that, but.
I mean, that's just a pitch, you know.
Right. So.
It can give you into conversation.
Exactly. So the conversation, what an entrepreneur wants to hear from the investor is, tell me more. Because eventually you're going to tell me more, we're going to peel back that onion, and what eventually will happen is say, I don't need anything more. I'll give you money. And we'll actually participate, hopefully, with the entrepreneur with some business guidance and advisory support, and hopefully make him make or her make a lot of money. That's the goal, make us money. When we look at the world of investing, you know, and this is from the perspective of equity investing more so than anything else. It goes through several stages, as pointed out in this chart called Capital Sources over the life cycle. When you start a business, you're going to be self-funding. Fair? You're going to start it with your own money. Eventually you say, hey, this is a really cool business. I need more capital than my bank account allows me. And we're seeing a lot of young people in the 20s. We're also seeing a lot of retired people, now going into another career, because there is no retirement per se. If you like what you do, the R word is a non-entity. Okay? So the first thing you do is you develop your proof of concept, you develop your business model, you have an idea in your mind, and you start to develop some feasibility. Does this make sense? Now, how are you going to get funding? Well, one of the ways to do it is if you have a rich daddy or rich family, you can say, would you give me money? Now, I grew up poor in New York. I mean, I grew up in a 6-story building. I couldn't go to my dad and say, he would look at me, he'd just laugh and say, good luck, kid. Wish you well, go to school, earn a good living and be comfortable. But the entrepreneur's dream is not to be comfortable, it's to change the world. And you want to be able to do that with the ideas that you have and the passion you show. So you're going to go to maybe a family, maybe friends. If you go to school, maybe you go to USC. I think a few of you go to USC, or my daughter went to USC. I know Chloe is going to USC. There are a lot of people there that may be able to give you funding for an entrepreneurial venture that you have. You may look at government grants or non-government organizations. Maybe the chamber has a program where you can actually get grant money. SBA has grant money. You have the SBA loan program, for money. So it really depends. NSF gives grants out for certain items as well. So you may be able to get grant money. But after that, what do? Well, you're still looking at a business that's not making money. In fact, you're spending a lot before you even get to selling anything. So now you have to find out, where am I going to get the funds to actually finish up what my development is, get into the market? Now you go to these people called angel investors. We invest in pre-seed. We invest in seed capital. We plant the seed that will eventually grow. As it grows, you'll see that different groups like venture capitalists will get involved. And then as it goes from venture capitalists, you'll find out that you wind up with private equity. You may go to banks. Now you have a sustainable revenue stream. Lending becomes easier when you go to a bank and you have a whole bunch of revenue behind you. Banks are kind of leery, tell me if I'm wrong, when you have no revenue, you don't have Elon Musk on your board, and you're trying to get capital. So you want to look at the angels. But here's an interesting thing. As you look at that curve on the bottom, you find out that your profitability continues to decline to a large point. We angels invest in a thing called the valley of death. The reason is we're investing at a point, at the inflection point, where you could turn an idea into something that is profitable, but we're giving you that opportunity for funding, and we're taking a piece of the action, but we know that's going to be probably the peak of the negative amount of money you'll earn. That's negative EBITDA, negative profit. As you mature your business, the risk gets lower. You know your business better. You know your market better. You have better suppliers. And all of a sudden the VCs say, that's kind of good. You've de-risked it. That's another term that we used. And now we'll invest. And they'll take us out, hopefully, and we'll make money. The VCs now make money, and they may be taken out eventually through a PE firm. So it's kind of interesting, but we invest in that valley of death where the profitability is not high, where the opportunity is great, but the probability of failure is also high. And when we look at the next slide, when we look at why startups fail, the number one thing that comes up is the fact that the product market fit is not there. We look at other things such lack of liquidity, i.e. funding, is not there. A lot of people come to us and say, hey, listen, we just need $1 million, and, we'll be able to be profitable. Others come to us and say, we need $1 million now, we'll need $5 million next year, $15 million the year after. And that is good for them. From an angel point of view, our equity declines because we're getting subsequent rounds unless we participate in those subsequent rounds. So funding and liquidity become a real issue. I don't know very many businesses that especially startups, that operate on deficit financing. It doesn't kind of work like that. You have to pay your suppliers, you have to pay your people eventually. The other one is team failure. I want to focus on team for a second. One of the key issues and one of the key parameters that we look at as angels is the executive team. Who is the CEO? Who is he or she? Who is on that team? Has that team worked together? We would really like to see a very good dream team. Now, if you came to me and said, I have a team that consists of Elon Musk, Larry Ellison, and Bill Gates, I may say, I don't care what product you have, I'll probably take a flyer and invest in you because, you usually do well. If you don't have that, you probably want to come up with a really good idea and make sure that I can understand that idea, and that's what we'll get into. The other components of why startups fail, the team doesn't have their head on a swivel. I've heard many pitches. I heard one yesterday, and they said, well, we don't have competition. We do everything perfectly. No one competes with us. Well, I learned, and this is what happens when you get to be older and you get to have a lot of, scars on your back of learning. Very expensive learning experiences. I was vice president of Boeing, and we put internet on the airplane. Okay, we thought, this is great. You're going to be productive. Think about this. You're going to be productive on an airplane you're going to be on a flight for 12 to 18 hours. You're going to be real productive. And you really don't need sleep. You don't really need to eat, but you really want to use this little system, this internet system, Wi-Fi on board an airplane, instead of using the in-flight entertainment. We were kind of wrong. People did like to eat. People did like to sleep. They kind of like to talk to each other. And in the era we put these things in, you had to plug in a card into the computer. It was called the PCM-CIA card. Well, this is a little different today. I mean, everyone has at least one or two computers on them at the same time. You have an Apple Watch, you have an iPhone, you have an Android, you have an iPad, you have a portable computer, you have a MacBook Pro, you have a MacBook Air, and you're carrying all these things, and the footprint's a lot smaller. So we kind of didn't realize competition is for the person's time at that time, not necessarily for the technology. See, this is where technology, being a technologist, is great and bad at the same time. Because if you believe technology is going to win, you're wrong. It's really the application of that technology for the benefit of the person consuming that technology. So when you go through the list, beware of the major elements that cause failure and keep your head on a swivel. A good team, that's a very good operational team, will always keep their head on a swivel, understand where the competition is today. And like Wayne Gretzky said when he was playing hockey, he said, I skate to where the puck is going, not to where the puck has been. You want to see where is the potential competition so you don't get outflanked down the line. So this is an important slide as well. Now, I want to take questions, first. Any questions relating to the, what angel investing or investing is and what we're trying to do. We're trying to avoid failure, by the way, obviously. And hopefully with this pitch and the ability for the angel investors to participate, we can minimize that failure. So I'll take any questions you all have.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Have you ever invested in films?
I have not invested in films. TCA tends not to invest in films. We've seen several. It's too high a risk. However, it was interesting. We saw a deal yesterday. I'm trying to remember the name of the company that uses some kind of mechanism to fund deals through tokenization, and the interest rate from putting these tokens in escrow will fund the film. So we see deals like that. We can invest in platforms like that, but films, that's a very big risk. On the other hand, if you come to me with Top Gun Maverick 3 and Avatar 4, yeah, I'll be more than happy to give you my credit card.
Well, more so documentary is something that can possibly have impact on the world.
Yeah, so we love impact, but let me be very correct. We want impact with profitability. Because when we give, and there are programs and there are angels, don't misunderstand me, that will invest in social programs and ESG programs. And some of those will be profitable and some of them may not be, but you want to do it for social good. So there are some companies, we saw one the other day, I'll invest in them, I don't know if it'll ever make money, but it is, it's using AI and new materials to create prostheses for people that lose limbs. And the way they've designed it, I think it's great. I can see it being used not only in the United States, but all around the world, especially in third world countries. I would invest just because it may be profitable, but that may be useful. But in general, we have to have the balance of business and investability, because the high probability is failure. I mean, I hate to say it. Sure.
Can you talk a little about what you've seen, I guess, in the past year since interest rates started going up, and then what you see moving forward in terms of both supply and demand in supplies and the amount of funds that angels are willing to invest in demand? How many startups are coming to you, and do they have to give you better terms now that there's more demand than there is supply?
Yeah, that could be probably a 4-hour discussion. But we've seen over the years with the interest rates going up and the economy sort of tanking, that a lot of angels will pull back on their investments. On the other hand, many of the angel groups, including TCA, have funds that money has already been committed, so we have dry capital. The problem that we had seen over the years was the frothiness and the high valuations that had taken place when COVID hit. COVID comes in, all of a sudden the valuations became egregiously high. And therefore, the investability was a little more problematic. The good news is, from last year to this year, and this is according to a group called CB Insights, they do a lot of work in the tech space and startup space. The valuations have come down maybe 5 to 10%, both in the seed round where we play and in the A round, which is the growth round. So we're seeing valuations come down. Therefore, when valuations come down, we get more interested in investing. And the fact that we have the funds also provide a nice buffer because we do have that capital. But if it's a good idea is a good idea. And frankly, when you look at history, many of the great ideas came out of eras when the economy was in a depression or recession. I didn't remember personally, so no one wisecrack about this, when Wrigley in the 1920s decided to invest more money in their gum. And because they did, they maintained the number one position in gum, and they obviously grew and built the field where the Cubs play. So it worked out for them, So investing when the markets and the economy are down really makes sense. Once you think about it, we go through cycles, right? So while the economy is down now, by the time these businesses mature, the market starts picking up, the economy starts picking up, and all of a sudden these companies take off. So it's kind of, we're a little cautious. People are concerned about putting excess capital into these alternative investments, as we call them. But it probably makes sense if you find the really good deal, because if it does take off, you're going to make a fortune, we hope. Okay? Any other question? All right. So now we'll talk about these things, what basically we look at when an entrepreneur comes to us. And our process is relatively simple. You can go online to techcoastangels.com, apply online to one or more of our chapters. And then it goes through the application process. We screen them. We do a pre-screen, screening. At the screening, the investors raise their hand, say, yeah, we'd like to invest in that. And then we go through due diligence, and then we fund. It's very, very simple in theory. The problem the entrepreneur has, they really have to answer 5 questions. And I'm not going to read all the subparts. You can read those. But is there a market, and is it growing? Is this a market that is going to be something that is scalable? Will customers buy the solution? Can you make the product and service? Do you have a unique technology? Do you have sustainable, what they call intellectual property or IP? Is the product revolutionary? Is it disruptive? We'd like to see more disruptive products. And you're seeing a lot of those disruptions now with, I'm sure you've all seen and read about ChatGPT and generative AI, and you've seen the older stuff now on autonomous driving and autonomous systems for inventory. Those kind of disruptions give us the highest potential for success, because that technology can be, go across multiple market segments and other products. So it may not be a bad investment for us. Can you make money? This is a very critical part. What is your business model? How are you going to make money? Do you have a very clear focus on what that target is that's going to buy? And how are you going to get to them? What's your sales and marketing and distribution plan? How do you support the product and service? Do I call the CEO? Do I call somebody in India or Malaysia or in in St. Louis, Missouri, or wherever the call centers are. How do I do that if there's a problem? A lot of these products and services right now require you to go online. Do you ever try to call customer service and it says before you even get to a person, it says something like, you're better off, going online because you'll get a faster response. Good luck. I mean, I'm maybe a little older than some of you, but I still like the personal touch. If I have a question, I don't really want to put it into a search box, which gives me answers that make no sense at all. So the combination of high touch, high tech has to be maintained. And that's part of the support. How do you support somebody? But the real critical issue is that last question that you want to look at. And that is, who is on your operational team and can they execute the plan? That's going to be really the key driver. And if I take a look at the entirety of all the things we look at in the parameters, the person and the team, the CEO, the rest of the operational team, and the advisors are really critical to the success of the business. And that's the number one criteria we look at. If the CEO and the team is poor, we may invest because the product is really out of the world. But in general, we are more cautious. We put a yellow flag up. But if you had a product that is okay and a great team, then we probably will take a chance on the CEO, especially if that CEO and the team had prior exits. So that's an important consideration. So there's a system that I kind of put together because this is the way I looked at it over 14 years of doing this stuff. And it really consists of making sure that the entrepreneur understands context. Without that, we just kind of like spin our wheels to try to understand what it is. Number two, how do I build relevancy and how do I establish a relationship so that the person who's listening to my pitch gets it? And there's a trick to that, believe it or not. Then there's the story. Story has two parts. I have a business part. Does it make sense from a business perspective? And number two, is it investable? Some of these businesses may not be investable for an angel because we look for a 10x return on our investment over a period of about 4 to 7 years, whatever the number turns out to be. So that's important. And then finally, when you make a pitch, what you always want to, it's called free space. The last slide says, here's the 5 or 6 points that reiterates why I'm a great investment, why my company makes sense for you. So the context is the elevator pitch. I'm going to share with you a good elevator pitch that might be useful. And then I'm going to talk about relevancy to build rapport, and there's some good ways to do that. Tell you how to develop a good story and share with you a couple of different tools to use that can be used not only if you're pitching from an angel, but you're developing a new product line within your business, or you're developing a new market segment or anything. It gives you it takes the big elephant and breaks it into, bite-sized chunks. And, as an engineer, if I can take a big complex problem and break it into parts, I can probably engineer a solution for it. So that's the mentality that I bring, that I've thought about as an engineer. I want to make it simple for me to understand. If I can understand it, probably others can too. And then we're going to talk about just the summary, and the summary is just the reasons why. So the context is this elevator pitch. And the goal of the elevator pitch, and the reason why it's called an elevator pitch, let's say you're at a Chamber of Commerce meeting, okay? And let's say I'm into the smart city business. And I have this really cool product that's going to help these cities reduce greenhouse gases, and also at the same time reduce the egregiously high natural gas and electric bills that are now in California. I say that because I just paid my bills the other day, and it's like another mortgage for both of those. It's crazy. What would be and remember, what you want to do is say, tell me more. You don't want to necessarily tell them how you're going to do it and spend 4 hours. That'll come later in due diligence. But there's a key in making sure that that person understands, the person listening, this is what we do and why it's a really cool deal. And you want to say, tell me more now, or set up a meeting with me. Later, I'll bring my teammates in, my partners, and we'll listen. So if you have a really strong team, start with the team. If you have a really strong product, start with the product. And there are some really key areas that you want to, tell about. Who are you targeting? Who's your target market? It'd be really nice to understand that. What's your technology underlying the business? And how is it sustainable? What are the benefits? And everyone has competition. So who are you unlike? And why are you unlike somebody else? Okay? You can be, you're digital, they're analog. We have better processes, they're slow. They use abacus and paper. Who knows? So you want to make sure that it's understandable. And then if you have time, you can say, I just want to let you know that, Larry and I are going to go out to Indian Wells, watch some tennis, and talk about some business. And that may give you a little, that halo effect may work to get some additional funding. You may want to add, if you have time, revenue and traction. You may have some early revenue, you may have some traction, you may have letters of intent from somebody. And then you may want to say, here's the deal, we're trying to only raise $2 million on a $5 million $5 million convertible note. So it's a pretty good deal relative to the competition out there, which is raising a lot more, and we don't need any more funding. So it really, you have to tailor it and structure it in a certain way. So let me give you an example of an elevator pitch. And the elevator pitch is sort of a real one. I remember this. I was we used to have our meetings at Stradling and Yucca down in Newport. And I remember this young gentleman standing up there, telling me about his business. And I remember this probably 10 years ago. And it went something like this. And I want you to react. I want you to think about it. What would you say? Would you say, tell me more, or say, I don't want to hear it? Okay? And tell me the reasons why you think this is a good elevator pitch. And then think about how you all introduced yourself. You don't have to score and rank each other, but, just think about it, because it may help down the line. My name is John, and I have a PhD in microbiology, and I've worked for the largest pharma companies. My brother, sister, and mother all had cancer. I have a goal to help them and others fight this disease, and I won't stop until I'm successful. I developed a diagnostic test based upon a sample of blood that is unique in the market using a concept called CAR-T. The cost is less than $10 per test. Unlike other screening and tests, you don't need a doctor's prescription. You can do it in the privacy of your own home. The tests have shown a 98% success rate on detection and can be used as a standalone or in conjunction with other lab tests. Now, you're an angel, you're sitting there. I'm now John. I'm presenting this to you. What would your reaction be? Would you want to learn more? Why?
Sounds like he's knowledgeable, he's expert in the field. Seems like the product that he's developing is affordable to the masses. And I want to know more about it.
All right. Other comments? Other questions?
What's the difference with Theranos?
Yeah, I thought, this was before Theranos, so forget Theranos. I mean, and I won't tell Larry Ellison you brought that up again, But yeah, I mean, it sounds very similar. And again, this is made up. It's kind of a kludge, but about 90% of it's real. This is the elevator pitch he had. And the answer is, I want to learn more. Why? But go ahead.
Isn't that a very long elevator pitch that you just read?
Well, in New York, our elevators are fairly high. We have high-rise buildings. I mean, I'm a New Yorker. I mean, even the Empire State, I could have gotten this done in 102 stories.
Because usually when you do elevator pitch, it's just like either 15 seconds or 20 seconds.
Well, I think you can, I think later on, I'm going to talk about a home base. And, I can basically cut this down to 15 seconds or 30 seconds. The point is, start with this as a platform and a baseline. Now I can say, look, my name is John, I'm a microbiologist, and I'm here to cure cancer. I have a $10 test that allows you to take this test for $10. You interested? I mean, that's a 15-second pitch. But I don't get the granularity of it. But, again, if it depends on the time you have, who you're pitching to, the venue you're in, to determine how long you really have. So be sensitive. If somebody says, I have 10 seconds, tell me what it is, I would probably say, Larry Ellison is on my board. We need $1 million to make, to turn it around to $100 million exit in 5 years. Interested? I have to tailor the pitch to the audience. So the biggest thing, which is a good segue, is building relevancy. Okay? You want to use words like imagine your wife, imagine your son, imagine your daughter who wants to buy this luxury streetwear. She doesn't know where to go to buy it today. But what if I had a solution that makes it easy for you to purchase luxury streetwear at a discount from an inventory that's a virtual inventory of all this luxury streetwear around the country? I mean, I'm looking around the table. I don't think anyone's going to be using luxury streetwear here, but your daughters, your sons, your grandchildren probably know about this. It's a big market. Okay? You might want to say, do you have the following problem? Because now you want that person to engage with you. If you use these words, your mind will operate in a way saying, how is this going to help me? What is this going to do? Now you're engaging with that entrepreneur, and that's what you want. You want to also do your homework as an entrepreneur, or even as developing any business, with the group or the person you're meeting. You want to look at the background. If the person comes out of real estate, you're trying to talk about a very clear technical problem or a technical solution, you have to try to slant it a little differently. If you're talking about CPG, or you're talking about a food product that's a brand new solution, maybe it's a new electrolyte solution. That's available, put 2 drops in a glass of water and you're hydrated for the day. You probably want to slant your elevator pitch and you talk a little differently. You want to look at the person's interests, the background, the investment philosophy. Not all angel investors invest the same way. If you're looking at ESG, find those angels interested in those kinds of deals. If you're interested in philanthropy, find the angel deals or the angels that invest in philanthropic platforms. Look at the prior investments they have. So again, when you look at all this stuff, you want to build this relevancy and get on the same wavelength of the person you're trying to, convince to say, tell me more. So with that, I'll open it up. Any questions on, the elevator pitch and then and relevancy, and then we'll get into how to build that story. You're all convinced? Because you're only going to get out of this conference room later if you give me a really good elevator pitch for the business that you're trying to build. I'm looking at you.
How do you get a quick sense of who the person is that you're trying to pitch to? So if you're saying son or daughter, maybe that's a kind of general thing. But if you're pitching something specific, how do you know what their needs are, what their concerns are before you?
Yeah, fair point. Fair point. The good news is you can do a lot of background checking on Google. You can go on our website. You can go to Tech Coast Angels. We say what our philosophy is. We share what the investments are. All angel groups, if you're an angel group, and those are the ones you want to pitch to, you probably you can see what the mission and investment theses are. If it's an individual, you can go on Crunchbase. You can go on any social media. You can find out, if you do your homework, who they are. Maybe it's a friend of a friend. Ask the friend, what does that person do? What is the person like? What does that person not like? Has that person invested before? What kinds of businesses? You just have to do a little homework. It can't be just, spray and pray. Doesn't work. Yeah.
I'm just talking as for me. Most of the time when you go for networking, you randomly meet people, small businesses, because you're there trying to find the leads. So basically, the doing your homework, trying to know the people, giving the right pitch, I don't think would fit on it. I mean, what I'm just trying to point out is when you go out on the networking, you're ready to pitch about you and how you're related to the next person you're talking to.
Yep.
That's just what I'm trying to.
Perfectly acceptable comment. Flip it around though. Instead of starting with your pitch, you're always anxious to pitch. Entrepreneurs are always anxious to pitch. Don't start like that. I look at somebody and I say, tell me about yourself. What are you trying to accomplish here? How many, why are you here? What, maybe I can help you. Build a relationship with that person. What's the most important word that a person, when you meet somebody, what's the most important word that you can use? Kind of a word. The name. Find out about them. What are you interested in? Then remember, you have this baseline elevator pitch. Tailor it to them. Oh, you went to USC? Did you go to the business school? Hey, I have a really interesting business venture. Maybe it'll, and we're using a concept that I think they use at that business school. Would it be okay to share with you a few, in about 10, 15, 20 seconds, what I'm working on? Ask permission. So learn about them, ask permission, and then launch. If it's a pitch contest and everyone's there to pitch, still ask, because that's just a gracious and nice way to do it, before you rattle off, your elevator pitch. Because remember, everyone else is trying to do the same. You want to stand out and distinguish yourself and make it relevant to them. I think that's the right way to do it. And trust me, when I was younger and impatient and a technologist, I just wanted to get my points across and go on to the next person. And that's like, when you talk about a New York minute, we brought it down to 10 seconds. And that's it. We wanted you to say, yes, see me, give me money, give me a credit card right now. It doesn't work. The world today is very different. There's a lot of people out there looking for money, a lot of people wanting to find the best investments. But the best way to do it is have a good elevator pitch and build rapport. You can't build rapport by shoving something down to them. You have to build rapport by understanding them. It's like, first seek to understand and then to be understood. Stephen Covey. That's an important, now I have Stephen Covey. I talked about Wayne Gretzky. I'll probably throw in Shaquille O'Neal somewhere down the line as well. Okay? So let's talk about, how do you build a story? Well, there's some tools that we'll use, and I'm not going to get into all the tools, but if it's a strong team, start with the team. If strong IP, because you have a great product market fit, something really disruptive, start with the problem and the solution. Address the following elements in your own style. Everyone has a different style. My style won't be the same as Christina's. It won't be the same as some of my colleagues. My background's techie. I probably will slant to tech. Some come out of more of an interpersonal business. They'll have a different style and have a different way to put the pieces together. But the story will always have to hang together relative to the 5 questions that I raised before. You still want to ask, is there a market and is it growing? You want to make sure people understand you're investing in something that's big and it's scalable. What's the technology? What's the IP? Do you have patents? Do you have no patents? Doesn't mean we're not going to invest because you have no patents, because you can get around patents fairly easily, especially in software. What's the business model, the P&L? We'd like to know, do you have an idea over the next 5 years? And it doesn't apply to all cases. When we look at biopharma and medical device, the gestation period is a lot longer, so you're not going to see a financial model for several years, at least nothing that's going to be substantive. But what's the P&L? Is it going, are you saying in 2023 you'll get $1 million, in 2024 $2 million, then you're going to get 4 million and 8 million. We saw one thing yesterday. It went in 2023, we're going to have $2 million in revenue. In 2024, we're going to have 25. In 2025, we're going to have 150. And in 2026, we're going to have $750 million. Well, think about how many companies grow that fast. And if you can name one that has grown in 5 years to $750 million, other than a magic drug, you can have my car. It's a Yugo, but it still runs. Okay. there's not many companies, so it raises doubt. It puts a little yellow flag up, and we want to understand, does this even make sense? Now, I don't personally, I can make an Excel spreadsheet, do anything I want. I've been in a few startups and I've been able to work the spreadsheet magic. But I want to understand when you get into due diligence, you want to peel back that onion and understand the different underlying assumptions that make up the revenue numbers and make up the cost numbers. Because some of these things sound too good to be true. And as you know, if something sounds too good to be true, it's probably not true. Not going to work out. So you want to be able to also figure out, how do you execute the plan? Who is going to be on your team? Who's on your advisory board? Is the advisory board going to be used to find additional business, which would be nice, or make introductions, or keep you honest in your strategy, make sure your governance is correct so you don't wind up any trouble with the government, what your go-to-market plan, and just don't tell me we're going to use social media and influencers and everything's going to be copacetic. It doesn't work that easily. Who are you going to use? How are you going to find the influencers? How are you going to leverage those influencers, and what else are you going to do to repost the content that they have? How are you going to get the influencers to even pay attention to you? Are you paying them, or are they doing it because they're really good? Now, I work with a company that's really, really good. They didn't pay anyone to do the marketing early on and the influencers. The company is named Super 73. They're a local company in Irvine. How many of you have heard of Super 73? Okay, you got to go on their web. I'm making a pitch. But Super 73 is an electric bike motorcycle company. They did the bikes are superb. They're built extremely well. They're classic looking. It looks like a mini bike from way back when. Will Smith and a few of the other celebs in Hollywood. That's why I figured you guys would all be driving at least one or two of them and have it, customized to you. They got on these talk shows, and at night, Will Smith said, "Yeah, I got this really cool toy. In fact, I bought two of them, and I did this, and I'm right." And no one paid Will Smith for that. They love the product so much. That's where you know you have really good product market fit. Okay? Not everyone's like that. So sometimes you have to pay for the influencers to get their attention, especially in the beauty area. Just an FYI. But it was kind of cool. And finally, on the other part of the story, how are we going to make money? What's the exit? Are you going to sell it out to somebody? You're going to go public? You're going to continue managing it? What is the deal? Because remember, we only make money on a sale, on some kind of an event that gets our money back. And we want to make money. We want to try to look at a 10x return over a period of time. Reasonable, be that 4 or 5, 6, 7 years, whatever the number is. And a lot of the med tech and biopharma, they'll be taken out before they even go commercialized, because these bigger companies will buy the technology or buy the molecules and then use their own, organization and the heft in that organization to really make money. So, it's a little different in different market segments. But one of the tools that I want to share, and I'm not going to get into it, it's just a cool tool. The chart after this actually fills it in, but I'm not going to go through that because I can't read it. Neither can you. But this will be all made available. So you're welcome to read it. It's just an example of a tool that's used in a lot of the colleges. It's used at UCI and the business school. It's called the Business Model Canvas. And it has various categories. It's like taking that big elephant and breaking it down into pieces. Okay? And you're going to, on the right-hand side, you have customer segments, customer relationships, and channels. Who's your customer? Who's your target? How are you going to get to them? What kind of relationship? Are you building a relationship that's only online? Are you building high-tech, high-touch? What's the story? What's the value proposition? What are the activities that you need early on to make this a reality? Whatever stage you're at. What are the key resources? What do you have? What do you need to get? What can I get through partnerships? And who are those key partners? In fact, maybe the partners can actually fund your investment. They become a strategic partner. I know when I was in the communication business, we had companies like Nortel fund some of our switches. We couldn't afford it. I was with a company called MCI in the real early years. Now I'm really dating myself. But in the early years, they funded a lot of our switches for the MCI network that we were building. what's the cost structure? What's the revenue? And I like to look at revenue not only as an aggregate number, break it down by product line, what I call routes to revenue. Maybe it's, products you sell, services you offer, accessories you offer. Maybe it's United States revenues, rest of the world revenue. But break it down, because I'd like to see the assumptions when we get into due diligence and what's behind those numbers. You're going to have to break it down anyway, but I happen to like routes to revenue and expense lines that make sense, because I really want to understand the growth. I want to see, is it even realistic? Does it pass the smell test? If you're going to tell me you're at $0 now and you're going to make $750 million in 5 years, I'm not sure you have my interest or my bemusement, because I don't know how you're going to do that, because the probability is slight, especially if you're developing an app on an iPhone. It just doesn't make sense. So things don't correlate. You got to be able to look at it. And then again, you look at competition, you look at alliances. But again, this just takes a nice little tool, breaks it into various components. And when you fill it out and you go to the next slide, if you can, you have the details, and it's an eye chart. But it basically starts formulating what that story is. Now, this is not what you're going to show to an angel investor. You're not going to say, let me show you the business model canvas and show you how clever I am about putting all these pieces together, because no one really cares and no one's going to read this stuff. But I have to figure out a way to take the information that I was able to put together with my team and translate it into something that makes sense for somebody else. So with that one, we're going to talk about a concept called message map. But before we do, I wanted to ask if anyone has any questions so far. All this is available. We'll make this available to you. You can take it. You can repost it. Whatever you want to do with it.
I had a side, not necessarily. The question was, what industries do y'all like? So like some that, this is the industry that we really like to invest in. And are you just, are we looking at equity? If you are you like a 51% equity type?
Yeah, we're not. That's a little more like the VCs go for the high ones, but it goes back to the earlier thing. Remember, we operate in the valley of death. Okay, low profitability, no profitability at all, and we'll take somewhere between 15 and 30% of the business. If you watch Shark Tank, they even do more. Something similar, maybe more. Maybe more equity, maybe less. They have some other conditions, because we've coached several of these teams that came out of Shark Tank. We saw one yesterday on one of the companies that Lori Greiner invested in a few years ago. And, not all those companies do get funding for a variety of reasons. Not all companies that go through a due diligence process get funding. Probably 20% or more drop out, because we want to really pull back, the sheets. We want to look at the underlying assumptions, see if it makes sense. Remember, we're looking at it from, is this investable and is it a good business? We look at those two ends, and they have to match together. And we specifically spend a lot of time looking at the qualities and the characteristics of the CEO and the team, because we do not want to give money to somebody who basically behaves like Theranos. It doesn't work. I mean, we're not putting in that big a deal. That was VC money or beyond, but it's still our personal money, and it's our fund, and it's our reputation. We don't want to do something that is not correct. So we try to minimize our mistakes by doing good due diligence. And to really do good due diligence, we're talking about pulling a diverse team together, different points of view, and breaking apart our business. And maybe even looking at the business, let's say the due diligence is set up like this business model canvas with all those elements. We may have a person or two looking at the customers. We'll talk to some of the customers. We have a person or two looking at cost, and then we'll come together and say, does this make sense? And then we'll make a decision. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Also the industries.
Oh, yeah. So the industries we in TCA you're in the film industry, right? Okay. You're in the drone industry. If you came to me with a drone that did certain things, I may invest in that drone business, because you have something unique in the drone. We've seen those companies in the drone business many years ago, particularly with with applications into the ag tech market. So how is it being used in ag tech, not only for, thermal imaging of the ground, but also for water and crop. Maybe you had, something called, just for argument's sake, let's say I invented a thing called the red camera. Oh, that is invented. I forgot. If you came to us, that would be a good opportunity. It was very disruptive. Okay. Maybe you came to us with a platform for funding films based upon tokenization. Pretty disruptive, different. Okay. We invest in, and you can go on our website at techcoastangels.com, look under the communications part, and you can see the annual report. We have all of our annual reports are listed, and you can see the breakdown, the market segments we invest in, 40% come out of health tech. And then when we look at some of the other big businesses, big in fintech, we're big in SaaS, software technology. We don't do a lot in consumer goods and products because it could be something of a passing fancy. That said, we invested in a company called Genius Juice, coconut water. It's actually pretty good. And the older generation doesn't particularly like it, but the Gen Z and millennials love it. So really understanding that market really made a big difference to us. And we see a lot of businesses coming out right now. I'm doing a talk on technology forecasts and trends in AI, generative AI. We're seeing precision medicine as an opportunity. We're seeing things relating to fintech, peer-to-peer, and mini loans. We're seeing femtech, feminine technology, seeing a lot of new devices, new products and new businesses. So it changes over a period of time. But if you really want to get a good perspective of what we do, it's on our website. If you want to get a good perspective of what some of the other people do in the VCs, just go on the website. They're pretty open and honest. And if you buy into one of the funds, then you definitely will know what they're doing. Look at prior history of the funds. They don't go too far astray. Okay? All right. So we're talking about building a message map. Now, the message map is really interesting. You can use it not only in pitching, but you can use it in making presentations to the board. I used it when I was at Boeing. I took a look at what I wanted to get across. And I'm very visual being an engineer and all. So I mapped it out in my brain so I can see what I was going to talk about. See, early on in my career, when I was an engineer and I had to make a presentation, I was a low-level engineer. And I made a presentation to some vice presidents, and the vice presidents are pretty scary people. They knew more than I did, and I was unsure of myself as a new engineer. So I took out all my little 3x5 cards. I had it all mapped out, one section after the other. And I got to like card 4, and one of the VPs said, well, let me ask you a question about this. And that's about all I can say. And it threw me right off. And I promised after that, I would never write out on 3x5 cards ever again my presentation. So this is a tool that I learned probably in the late 80s, early 90s. A gentleman named Trip Frolickson of Media Masters taught it to me, and it's probably taught in the Annenberg School as well. It really is. It's called a message map, but it's a great tool if you're making a presentation to an angel or making a presentation to the board or even making a presentation to your children who don't want to listen to what the adult dad is saying. I haven't used it on my daughter or my son yet because they're a little beyond that. But you never know. Maybe my grandchildren. You never know. So what this is a very simple structure. It consists of a home base, which is basically the short version of an elevator pitch. And I'll share with you what this is, again, a semi-true company. It's one of my clients, actually, a past client. It consists of a thing called supporting pillars. You'll see what that means. And we'll also cover things called proof points. Okay? Now, when you see it, you're going to say, this is easy stuff. And before the round wheel was invented, everyone was using square wheels. So when the round wheel was invented, they said, wow, that was easy stuff. So this is really easy stuff. But the easy stuff and the easy model makes it simple. It's like KISS. Keep it simple, you know what the other word is, right? So this one is the design. It basically consists of a home base, which is the essence of what you're trying to get across. Now, this one's made for a pitch to, an entrepreneur making a pitch to an angel group. Okay. So in this case, the home base was a thing, I called the company, this is not the real name, Aardvark. And it said, Aardvark offers 3 levels of service, scheduled on demand and do it yourself from qualified and responsible suppliers at a cost less than other competitors for both users and for suppliers. So it's basically something you would maybe look at as a competitor to Angie's List, or looking at a Google search and finding a contractor. Okay, so this is a company that would want to get funding, equity funding from one of the angels. Okay, and the way you build the story is now you create these pillars. And in this case, we put 4 pillars down. I'll show you what those pillars are in a second. And then what supports those pillars. It's like building a house. So the foundation is going to be this home base. It's going to be a really nice 1-story house in a country club estate looking over the 17th fairway, and my little lake on the side will have my 45-foot yacht, standing by. That's my, my home base. What are the pillars? Well, what kind of siding am I going to have? What kind of windows am I going to have? What kind of skylights? And what's the composition of all these other pieces? Now I start pulling it together. Now I have a really interesting story. So the next thing I'm going to look at are, how do I fill it in? So on the next slide, we're looking at 4 elements. And in a sense, if you think about it, these are 4 elements that I was talking about before of how I, as an entrepreneur, present my story to a bunch of investors. Okay? So 1, technology, because technology governs. I mean, if you have a really great technology platform, it could give you a sustainable advantage. Number 2, we like financials. So what is the financial investment? What does it look like? Number 3, what about the team? How am I going to use the team? How am I going to execute? Is this team really great or is it mediocre? How am I going to use the advisory board? And who is the customer and what is the customer going to look like? How am I going to get to that customer? And how am I going to go from one customer group to the other? How am I going to expand beyond that point? And expansion can also cover technology. So my technology gives me this business, but the platform upon which it's built enables me to do other businesses as well, or other kinds of services off that technology. So when you look at it, in this case, just pick one for an example. If I'm explaining Aardvark, we have a technology based upon 3 patents and middleware to connect our services to people like Ferguson and Home Depot suppliers. That middleware makes it real simple and easy for us to find the best deals across the board. We have a real simple AAA system of authorization and authentication for accounting and billing. So we can help the suppliers keep track of what they want. We can pay them quicker and all. Okay, it's part of the nice story. It seems to make sense. If I look at financials, we look at our EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, tax, interest, depreciation, and amortization. We have EBITDA growth to positive numbers in year 3, and in year 5 we have substantial EBITDA, which may enable one of our partners or suppliers to buy us out at a nice multiple. The business model yields 3 routes to revenue. Remember, I talked about different ways. We have 3 different services we can offer. Even if I find out that one of them doesn't come to fruition, I have another 2 to support what I'm trying to do in my business model. And the valuation cap, well, on our note, it's a note called the convertible note, converts into equity. It's kind of a loan converting into equity, is only $3 million. So it's very reasonably priced relative to what we're seeing in valuations today at an average of $8 million in our market. And then you can do the same for customers, and you can do the same for the team. But you see how it's nicely built up. And now, let's say an angel asks you a question. You kind of know the answers because you built it from that prior chart, that business model canvas. And even if they don't ask you something on technology, as you pointed out, you probably know that answer. You can kind of visualize it. So if you get stuck and you're not on your cadence. You just say, okay, I know I have to talk about these 4 points, and I know each of these 4 points have, 4 more points. It makes it easy for the brain to communicate those points because your brain can encapsulate things, between 4 and 7 items at a clip. So I've broken it down into 5 items, then 4 items, then 4 items. So it's really easy. And then finally, just to sum this thing up, and then we'll go into Q&A, and anything, you can ask any question. We use this as free real estate. Just a summary, why does this make sense? Now, if it's a pitch for getting equity financing or funding, certainly you're going to put these things, things like this up on the screen and leave it up there as we ask questions. If you're developing a business proposition, maybe for the Chamber of Commerce, maybe for your own business, maybe for the drone company, you want to say, here are the 5 things you should remember. What the goodness is, and it reflects back upon that elevator pitch. It just ties together. I just want to remind people that when we make a decision in the entrepreneurial world, team represents about 30% of the 100 points we give out. We don't have a point score like that, but team is very critical. The opportunity, the size of the market, 25%, product market fit 15. Although remember, if you have a bad product market fit, it kills everything. It doesn't make a difference how good everything else is. If it doesn't work and the people don't want to buy it, it will not sell. Then you get into competition, unique and sustainable advantage, go-to-market plan, and other. It's lower ranked. But when you do your summary, cover the team. I have a very strong team. We've worked together. We've had several exits. We have a high potential for exit. We keep our head on a swivel. Some of the people on the team come from the competitors, so we kind of understand who they are. We have an opportunity that will, for saving the lives of 60,000 people a month. That's a pretty large number. We don't need that many to really be successful, but we have this big market and we have the opportunity not only to provide our products to that market, but additional products that market would want. We have some in the process because of our technology. You take a look at sustainable advantage. While we have 6 patents, we're not resting on our laurels. We're working with some of our partners and strategics to try to build out our brand in the market and show how good we are in providing these solutions. And our go-to-market plans are very reasonable, using a combination of influencers who have agreed to provide provide product profiles and product reviews at no cost to us. And these influencers have a combined 20 million, viewers. And then you say, can I tell you more? And hopefully you hear the investors say, tell me more, let's meet in a separate meeting, and then you get capital. And then all of a sudden, a few years later, I see your picture on the cover of Forbes magazine and said, I remember him, he listened to my pitch. And that's the whole thing.
Thank you for tuning in to Accelerate. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite streaming platform and on our YouTube channel. For more information on the Hollywood Chamber, please visit hollywoodchamber.net. Want to join us for our next HCC event? Network and mingle with Hollywood's leading business professionals, innovators, and creatives at some of the top-rated restaurants and venues in the area. Register for our monthly lunch hustle, speed leads, bash, and happy hour events at hollywoodchamber.net/events.